still want Framber Valdez? I'm answering those questions and plenty more coming up on this live mailbag episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Thursday, September 4th, 2025. Or if you are listening on audio, it is Friday, September 5th, 2025. And welcome back into a live mailbag episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, it is kind of run by you all, the listeners and the viewers, especially the viewers here live on the Locked On Orioles YouTube page. If you've got questions about the O's, put them in the YouTube chat. Thank you to everyone who has joined us live so far. And I'm going to try to get to every single question that is in the live chat today. I've gotten some questions via email as well. Remember, if you have further mailbag questions, you just want to talk some ball, whatever it may be, you can always email me, lockedonorioles@gmail.com. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel while you're here. If you're listening after the fact, make sure to follow, subscribe to the show, leave a 5-star rating and a review. It all helps us out, all helps us put on these mailbag episodes here today. And this mailbag episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for two to any golf tournament in the USA. Visit 5hewin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament. Ends October 31st of 2025. So we got a live mailbag episode. Again, put your questions in the chat here. We've already got a few of them coming in. How we'll do this is we'll kind of start with some live questions. Then I'll jump into some questions I've gotten via email and then go back to the live chat here. So we will start with a question here from Justin. Chances you think the Orioles extend Trevor Rogers this offseason? Well, first of all, I would love to see it. Rogers has made 14 starts. He has been, without a doubt, the best starting pitcher in Major League Baseball in those 14 starts he has made this year. He's under contract for one more year. He's a free agent set to be after 2026. So no matter what, the Orioles will have Rogers back next year. But he's only 27 years old. He's essentially Adley Rutschman's age. I think he's like a little bit older, but not by that much. And he's pitching this well. Now, again, big contracts for pitchers, much riskier than big contracts for position players. And we know the Orioles, even though they gave out the extension to Samuel Basallo, have not given out any type of multi-year deal to a pitcher since Mike Elias took over. So it would be the first one if they gave it to Trevor Rogers. But I got to tell you, if Rogers is willing to take, I don't know, I mean, you'd probably buy out his final year of ARB next year if you gave him an extension and pay him a little more money than he might make. So let's first look and see what Trevor Rogers is probably going to make in arbitration next year. He's making $2.6 million this year. He's going to get a large raise because of what he did this season, but it's not going to be an insane raise. I don't know. He's not going to make more than $10 million probably next year. So if you offer him 4 years and $80 million, that buys out next year so he can up his earnings from 10 to 20 for next year. And then he can make $20 million per year for the next 3 seasons. He can still hit free agency around 31 years old and get another contract. And Rogers, who's, hasn't had a lot of success before this year since his rookie year in Miami, I think he takes that. And I think I'd be cool with that if I'm the Orioles. So I would do that kind of deal. I'd say chances are, I'll say 25% chance, which pretty high considering this Orioles team hasn't spent a lot of money recently. 25% chance they would extend Trevor Rogers this offseason. Cosign with a question here just says manager suspicions ? I've gotten some similar questions via email and other places. I'm not going to go into names. I'll have an episode pretty early in the offseason, probably during the postseason. I did an episode when Brandon Hyde was fired, kind of the first look of potential candidates for the next Orioles manager. I will do another one of those episodes in October and go really deep on some names. What I will tell you is I don't think Tony Mansolino is getting the job. I would like for the Orioles to try and keep Mansolino around back in his old role as kind of the infield coach and the third base coach. I think he did some great things with the Orioles infielders since he was hired in 2021, I believe. But that's kind of a weird thing to say, hey, you're not going to keep this job we just promoted you to, but we're going to demote you if you want that. Usually guys will just move on. they'll go outside the organization. I think that's pretty clear. Other than that, I think there's going to be a large pool. They're going to do a lot of interviews and try and find kind of the right guy for that seat. Question here from Walter. What do you think the outlook is for Tyler O'Neill once he picks up his options for 2026 and 27? Do we just hope he performs adequately in 26, then goes contract year mode in 27? Yeah, so for the context for Tyler O'Neill, he signed a 3-year deal worth just shy of $50 million with the Orioles this offseason. So he's getting, what's the math there? Right around 16.5, I believe, 16.5 million for each of the 3 years. But it does have a player opt-out after year 1, which means if O'Neill wanted to, he could opt out of his deal after this season and become a free agent again. Now, I don't think he's going to do that, because if he opts in, he is guaranteed to get, 2 years, $33-ish million. Whereas if he opts out, with all the injuries he's had, now O'Neill is doing baseball activities now, so it's, unless he has a setback, he's going to return and play some more games before this season ends. But at this point, it's a 99 WRC plus, basically been a league average hitter, and he's only played in 43 games, which would be a career low because of all the different injuries that he has sustained. The slugging is down, the on base is down, the batting average is down, all from when he had a really good season in Boston last year. Does he think he could get more than 2 years, $33 million? That's the question. The answer is probably no. So I think he's going to opt in. And for Walter's question, you just hope he's healthier. Tyler O'Neill is not going to play 150 games in a big league season. It's just not going to happen. The Orioles knew that when they signed him last year. But you need him to play more than 43. Like, he's never played as low as 43. He'll probably beat that again because he's going to come back. But you need him to play at least 100 games and hit for power. And he really didn't do either of those things this year. So you just kind of hope he does that. And then, his contract year in 2027, at that point he'd be 32. So he'd still have a chance to get some more money in free agency again. So I guess you just kind of hope for that contract year breakout again. And he hits like we've seen the good O'Neill do it. If he's healthier, he's going to be more productive, because when he's been healthy in his career, he's been a productive hitter. It's just, we know he can't stay on the field. D-Nick23 with a question. Do you think Jeremiah Jackson will continue to make a name for himself next season? And if so, where do you see him playing? I got a very similar question from Ilan on email as well. Kind of, where do you see Jeremiah Jackson fitting in next year, given his current level of offensive production? Do you think he'd be an everyday player, perhaps a DH at times? So kind of combining those two questions just about the future of Jeremiah Jackson. Obviously, it's been great so far, right? Orioles signed him to a minor league deal this offseason, former top prospect, really never made it with the Angels and the Mets, comes over, is okay in AA, gets promoted to AAA, and then for 40 games in Norfolk is literally the best hitter in AAA baseball this year. So the Orioles trade a bunch of position players at the deadline. They're like, we should probably call this guy up at age 25, who again is younger than some of the Orioles' other young position players, and just at least see what he's got. Well, he had a 13-game hitting streak snapped yesterday, but 29 games, 111 plate appearances, 321 average, 351 on base, 519 slugging. It's a 141 WRC plus. He's been the Orioles' best hitter since he joined the team. Now, it's only a 5% walk rate to a 23% strikeout rate. It's a 395 BABIP that he's running. He is playing over his heels, and we kind of know that, right? He's not going to hit 321 over a long sample size. He's going to come down from this. But I certainly think offensively, he could at least produce to Ramon Arias levels. Now, his defense is not to the level of Arias. He's never going to win a Gold Glove at third base, but he's going to get better there. And he can also play the outfield, which he's gotten better out there, which Arias couldn't bring you. I think his role next year is going to be in that Ramon Arias role. And the question I got via email was, do you see him having space to be an everyday player? I don't. You look at the Oriole infield, you're going to have Jackson Holliday at second, Gunnar Henderson at short, Jordan Westburg at third. And then at first base, we're going to see really at first base and DH. It's going to be some mixture of Kobe Mayo, Ryan Mountcastle, Samuel Basayo, Adley Rutschman, Tyler O'Neill, maybe hopefully Heston Kjerstad, kind of all rotating through those spots. Not going to be even a lot of DH at-bats for Jeremiah Jackson. That's without the Orioles potentially bringing in another bat this offseason. But think about it this way for Jackson. If you think he deserves to get a lot of run time, can you even think of a year in which Ramon Arias was like coming into opening day seen as the everyday third baseman for this Orioles team? 2020, he wasn't on the team yet. 2021, Maikel Franco was there. 2022, is probably the only year where that was the case, where Urias was kind of seen as the guy coming into the season, and he may not even have been that. 2023, we really saw it as more Adam Frazier, Jorge Mateo, Gunnar Henderson with Urias roving around. 2024, at that point, you were looking at Holiday, Gunnar, Westberg, and that's where we are at now. Like, for Ramon Urias, that was never really the case for him. And yet you look back and you realize that Ramon Urias, while he was never, an everyday player for full seasons, that dude played a lot of baseball for the Orioles over the years, right? 450 plate appearances in 22, just under 400 in 23, 300 in 24, 300 in 2021. He was never an everyday guy, never played more than 118 games for the Orioles, but he played a lot, even with, again, never really being a guy coming into the year who was going to have an everyday spot. So Jackson, if there's any kind of injuries or anything like that, that's where his spot could come from. I think he'll begin the year as more of a utility guy, but then there's going to be space for him. Tom with a question again, main contenders to be the manager. I don't really know at this point yet. Again, we'll get into that in a further episode, probably in October. Most likely starting pitcher free agents they may sign in the offseason, or starting pitcher to target in a trade. That's a question from B-Man here. We're going to talk about one of those guys in the second segment. That's kind of the title of this episode. We're going to get to Framber Valdez. But if you don't want to talk about Valdez and you just want to talk about kind of who else is out there at this point, they need to sign a starting pitcher, right? I mean, they need to sign multiple starting pitchers. I would say the guys I'm interested in, Dylan Cease, Ranger Suarez, Michael King are some of the big ones. Merrill Kelly, Zach Gallen. You look a little further down the list, you maybe think about the Griffin Cannings as more of like the back end guys to potentially help you out. Like, there are names out there that the Orioles can go and get. Brandon Woodruff might potentially be out there this year. So we will see, but there are certainly a lot of interesting names for the Orioles. Let's see. Milo with a question here. Ideal rotation, assuming you acquire a number one pitcher. This is also a similar question I got to via email, a question from Derek via email. So let's dream on staying a little bit healthy. How great would this rotation look? Number one is a free agent ace. Number two, Kyle Bradish. 3, Trevor Rogers. 4, Grayson Rodriguez. 5, Dean Kramer, with your depth as Cade Povich, Tyler Wells, Brandon Young coming in behind them. That feels like a really good playoff rotation if those guys are healthy. Now, the biggest health question there is Grayson Rodriguez. You also got to assume Kyle Bradish is going to be all good to go and back fully from the Tommy John surgery, which I would like to think he is. But if they do add a true number one, like if the Orioles go out there and legitimately add a Dylan Cease type pitcher at the top of that rotation, and you stay healthy, and you have Cease, Bradish, Rogers, Rodriguez all healthy and ready to go in the playoffs, that's one of the best rotations in Major League Baseball, with Dean Kramer being right where he should be, one of the best number 5 starters in the league. That doesn't always happen because you can't count on health from pitchers, but that would certainly be something awesome. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to get to the question I got the most kind of prior to coming on here, the emails, the posts, everything. We're going to talk about Framber Valdez because before this week, he was probably my number one free agent starting pitching target for the Orioles. That may have changed after an incident earlier this week, and we'll talk about that coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Zippix. Need a boost to power through the day without reaching for another cup of coffee or an energy drink? That's where Zippix caffeine toothpicks come in. Instead of the crash you get from sugary drinks, Zippix gives you a clean, convenient burst of caffeine anytime, anywhere. And if you're looking for nicotine satisfaction, they've got Zippix nicotine toothpicks as well. So for Zippix, Zippix can help you with multiple things, right? They're pocket sized, they're discreet, and so you can take them anywhere. They got good flavors as well. So if you're ready to try them, go to zippixtoothpicks.com and use promo code LOCKEDON for 10% off your first order. That's zippixtoothpicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Zippix Toothpicks, energy and focus anytime you need it. So make sure to continue to put your questions in the chat. We'll get back to the live Orioles mailbag in just a moment. But first, got an important request here. Locked On wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks for helping us out here at Locked On Orioles and the Locked On Podcasts Network. So we're here in a live mailbag episode. Continue to put those questions right here in the YouTube chat. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. So I got this question via email from a couple of people, other places as well. Let's see. Matthew sent this one in. Does Framber Valdez allegedly intentionally throwing at his catcher change your opinion on the Orioles trying to sign him this offseason? Jack emailed in with a similar question. I want to get your take on the whole Framber Valdez cross-up situation, and how does that factor into a decision to add him to the Orioles in free agency? If you missed the story, it's probably the biggest and weirdest and craziest story in Major League Baseball this week. It's the first time I've addressed it on the show, but again, it was more of an Astros issue. Framber Valdez pitching for the Astros, right? Kind of the de facto ace of their staff. He's an impending free agent for the first time this offseason. He's due to get a big-time deal. He is probably the guy who fit the Orioles the best, right? Mike Elias knows him well. And Kobe Perez, they signed him out of the Dominican Republic. They got him to Houston in 2018 in the big leagues when Elias was still there. He turned into an ace for this Houston team. Last 6 seasons, he's at a 3.57 ERA or lower. Last 5 seasons, he's made at least 20 starts. Last 4 seasons, he's made at least 27 starts and counting, with great numbers. 4 WAR pitcher at FanGraphs, 3 out of the last 4 years. Low walk numbers, good strikeout numbers, really high ground ball rates, good sinker, nasty curveball. Not super old, right? He'll be 32 next season. A guy you bring in for a 4-year deal could still be at the top of your rotation. It just felt like the perfect fit because he won't be getting like the big time Max Fried, Garrett Cole plus money. So it's a little more affordable. He just felt like the perfect fit to be atop of this Orioles rotation with everything that he brings as a left-hander as well. There's been some little things that have happened. You talk to Astros fans. He sometimes can lose his cool a little bit on the mound. There was a really good article by Chandler Rome in The Athletic this week after the incident happened, kind of talking about Framber's history working with the sports psychologist that the Astros hired, just to kind of get his emotions a little more in check when they can get away from him at times. He's kind of publicly gotten spats with catchers before. Previously, it was Yainer Diaz last year when he was kind of upset that Martin Maldonado was gone, and he was, complaining about the Astros shifts kind of publicly as well. But the biggest incident by far happened this week. He's bases loaded, 2 outs, 5th inning, Astros, Yankees. Valdez is on the mound. They're down 2-0. They're trying to get out of the jam. And he falls behind 1-0 against the lefty Trent Grisham. And you can see Cesar Salazar, who is a rookie catcher. He's only caught, I believe, now 18 games in the big leagues. And he's only out there because their backup catcher, Victor Caratini's on the injured list. So Salazar's up here. And it was the second time that Salazar had caught Valdez. So it wasn't like the first time they had ever worked together. And Salazar makes the call on the pitch comm. And then you can see he kind of puts his knees down and waves Valdez off the mound, right? You see that from catchers from time to time. They either think the pitch clock is going to run out, so they want him to step off, or they're saying, you know what, I don't like the pitch I called. Step off. We have one to use. Let's reset. Let's call a new pitch. Try to get out of this jam. Valdez doesn't step off. He throws the pitch. It's a bad sinker right down the middle of the plate. Trent Grisham hits it for a grand slam to make it a 6-0 game, basically puts it away, and eventually leads to a Yankees win in Houston. Next batter is Anthony Volpe, and on, I believe, the second pitch of that at-bat, Valdez throws a sinker, which basically hits Salazar in the chest protector. And you're like, how does a catcher not catch a fastball right at him? Well, very clearly, Salazar had called for a curveball via the pitch comm. Valdez didn't shake him off and just threw the fastball anyway, basically crossing up his catcher in a way that could certainly injure a guy, even with all the protective gear he has on, if you nail him with a 95-mile-per-hour fastball. And then Valdez, showing no remorse, just turns around and walks off the mound and doesn't look at his catcher. Now, Salazar looked at the dugout. He kind of handled it well. They just kind of continued the at-bat. There was apparently they were talking in the clubhouse. There was a meeting between the two of them and the manager, Joe Espada, over there in Houston. And They kind of played it off well in the media, although their stories didn't really match up on what happened. And we're never going to know exactly what Valdez's intent was. But when he was asked about it, he basically said, I didn't want to throw the curveball, to paraphrase. I wanted to throw the sinker, so that's what I threw. The issue is he didn't tell that to his catcher, and he could, if he throws that in the wrong place, could seriously injure his rookie catcher because he's upset, it seems, that Salazar was trying to call different pitches or get him to step off the mound the at-bat before, and he's going to nail his catcher because of that, even if it was just a bad decision made in the moment and he completely regrets it, which seems like might be the case. That's concerning. Like, that's very, very concerning that you are in the moment willing to try and injure one of your own teammates because you're mad at them about the last pitch call. That's not okay. And when he has, it doesn't have a giant history, but a little bit of history of smaller scale incidents like that, for an Orioles team that has not given out big money to anyone, and especially a starting pitcher, we know how risky they are with all the injuries, not just the Orioles pitchers, but every pitcher across the league. If the O's are really going to finally take that step and give out big money to a starting pitcher in free agency, and you have something like this on Framber Valdez's record this recently, it's not like something that happened 4 years before free agency. It's something that happened 2 months before he hits free agency. That's going to be on teams' minds, and I would assume on the Orioles' mind. Now, the O's are going to know him any better than any other team besides the Astros, because some of that front office was there to scout him when Valdez came in with Houston. But still, there's going to be questions. And to be honest with you, if he's past it and he's working on it, I'm still fine bringing in Valdez. I think the talent and what he brings to the Orioles team could be huge. But I'll tell you right now, he is no longer my number one choice for a starting pitcher in free agency. Like, that is very, very concerning and just not okay. And I don't think worth the hassle if his price is going to be, 5 years pushing 150 to 200 million. I look elsewhere, to be honest. And so I appreciate the questions, but I think they could still be on him. I'd still be okay bringing him in on the right price. But if he's going to be that big money starting pitcher, I think the O's are going to second guess it. And I'm certainly second guessing, because that is just something you'd never seen before. Just wild that he would think that was okay to do that. And that's kind of where I land on that one. Keep putting your questions in the chat. We will come back after one more break and then try to get through all of these questions on the live YouTube page. So make sure to put your questions in the YouTube chat. We'll get to them coming up right after this. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. It's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. This grape, ginger, and lime-flavored shot brings the iconic taste of a golf course favorite to a non-alcoholic boost. It's perfect for sinking birdies or making great memories with friends. It's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Whether you're out on the course or just need a little extra push to power through your day, 5-Hour Energy Transfusion delivers the clubhouse flavor you love without ever leaving the green. All those crazy shots you might have made in your past, 5-Hour Energy can help that out as well. In golf, it's all about good times with good people and good flavors. The grape, ginger, lime flavor of 5-Hour Energy Transfusion gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without leaving the course or chasing down the bev cart. And now you can amp up the fun even more. Just buy, snap, and enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for 2 to any golf tournament in the USA. So tee up that trip. Visit 5hewin.com for rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament. Ends October 31st, 2025. So we are back here on this live mailbag episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast. I am taking your questions live here in the YouTube chat. Let's see where we left off here with the questions. John Davies, not as much of a question, but saying Robert Suarez for closer in the pen with his brother. Yeah, Albert Suarez and Robert, of course, brothers. We'll see on Robert Suarez, right? It depends if he's still a Padre or if he opts out and hits free agency. I'd totally be down to add him to the team. I just don't know how much money they're going to want to spend on relief, but obviously the Orioles do need a closer now with Felix Bautista out for next year. So I'm certainly interested in Robert Suarez. John Davies with another one. Zach Gallen could be realistic after a down year. Been pitching well recently. Yeah, Gallen's been really, really good in Arizona his last few starts after kind of a disastrous season. He's going to hit free agency. He'll probably have the qualifying offer attached to him, and the Orioles aren't going to want to lose a draft pick, so that's something there. But he could be kind of a buy low candidate this offseason for a guy who's looked like an ace as recently as last year and does have ace stuff. Question from Walter here, kind of similar. Your thoughts on closer free agents for 2026? I've heard mention of Robert Suarez via the connection to Albert, but it is a really deep free agent class. Yeah, there are options, right? I talked about it when we did the episode when Felix was officially out for most, if not all, of next year. I mean, you've got potentially Edwin Diaz, Kenley Jansen, Ryan Helsley, Robert Suarez, and then you got kind of the second tier of guys who you'd feel better if they were like your great setup man, but could be a solid closer in Emilio Pagan and Luke Weaver and Tyler Rogers and, Sir Anthony Dominguez and Kyle Finnegan and Raisel Iglesias and Gregory Soto and David Robertson and Chris Martin. And there's a lot, Devin Williams. There's a lot of good relievers who are going to be out there this offseason. I'll, of course, do multiple episodes talking about how the Orioles are going to fill that hole at closer next year. It's probably going to be through free agency, but I think the O's are going to sign one of these guys. I don't think they'll play at the very top of the market. Like, I don't think they'll play at the Edwin Diaz part of the market, but maybe more the Luke Weaver part of the market, maybe more the Raisel Iglesias, maybe more the Devin Williams part of this market. I could totally see one of those guys ending up in Baltimore. Next question from Hunter. Chase McDermott to the bullpen. Chase McDermott is already in the bullpen, just in AAA Norfolk. He's pitching really well in relief. I think there's a very high chance we see McDermott join the big league team at some point here in September and pitch out of the pen. And I honestly think he is going to be in the Orioles 2026 bullpen for the majority of next year. I think he really, really fits well in that spot. Let's see. Walter with another question here. What do you think of Colton Cowser's continued trouble with breaking balls? Do you think it will continue to somewhat limit his upside, or do you think he can figure it out to get to that next level? Yeah, that is really the Colton Cowser conundrum, right? He plays a great defensive outfield. He's getting better and better in center field. I trust him out there. He's not really hitting lefties, but he's generally hitting righties, and the dude just mashes fastballs. He's got big-time power. It's a pretty good batting eye. The off-speed stuff just gets him. And here's the difference, right? This year, breaking balls, he's hitting 143. Off-speed changeups, he's hitting 179. Last year, changeups 171, but breaking balls, he hit 260. And that is the big difference. Last year, Cowser could hit a curveball and a slider. He could not hit a changeup. I think it's okay. He can survive as a solid big leaguer if he usually can't hit a changeup. But if it's also going to be like this year where he can't hit anything that's not a fastball, that's an issue. So if he can get back to last year where he was also hitting curveballs and sliders, even from lefties, I think he'll be fine as a solid bottom of the order outfielder who has some power. If he figures out how to hit all of it, that's your all-star type player. I don't know if he's going to get there, but I will say it's slightly concerning. But the nice part is we've seen him do it in the big leagues, right? He hit the sliders and the curveballs last year in the major leagues. That means he could do it again. Let's see. More questions here. Dan, could Povich move into long relief? He seems really good for 3 innings. I think that's probably where Cade Povich is headed. I talked about it on yesterday's episode. After Povich goes 5 scoreless against the Padres, he's at like 60 pitches. He comes back out there in the 6th inning and goes single, homer, single, walk. First 5 batters reach, comes out, ended up leaving the day with 4 earned runs on his ledger. Luckily, the Orioles bullpen cleaned it up and still got the win and the sweep in San Diego. But he's got giant splits. First time through the order, he's amazing. Second time, he's not very good. Third time, he's horrendous. That is not a good recipe to be a consistent starting pitcher in the major leagues. Now, he's made 34 starts, I think, in the big leagues. That's basically 1 full season's worth. So he still has a lot of seasoning to go. He is still a young pitcher. He is still hopefully going to get better and still has plenty of time to do that. But there's not a lot of opening. The opening is this year. He's got 3 more starts down the stretch. The goal would be that next year, coming into spring training, Cade Povich is not projected to be in the rotation because the Orioles have 5 healthy starting pitchers who are better than him. The hope is he goes into spring as depth. Maybe he could be a long reliever, or maybe he starts the year in AAA and comes up when the Orioles need a starter. I don't know how his stuff would play in the bullpen, but he is really good that first time around. Some interesting stuff. I think we'll see him at the pen at some point next year. Would you sign Dylan Cease this offseason? That's a question from Danny. I absolutely would. I'll do kind of my full power rankings later in the offseason on which kind of top line starting pitchers I'd like the Orioles to go after and how I would order them. But Cease is near the very top of the list. I don't think he's number 1 because he's having a little bit of a down year, but he's got the good stuff. He's been actually pretty durable, which is you love to see. I mean, starting pitchers are durable until they're not. It's hard to bank on it, but I would absolutely go after Dylan Cease. I think the Orioles will certainly be going after him as well. Let's see. Hunter with another question. Who gets the next big extension? Please say Trevor Rogers. I think it was the first question I addressed today is chances you think the Orioles extend Trevor Rogers. I said about 25%. And when I did the Samuel Basallo episode, right after he signed his extension, I did like the top 5 of the next guys to sign an extension. And I did put Trevor Rogers as number 1. I think some of it's because of how well he's pitching, certainly, but also some of it's because of the urgency, right? He's a free agent after next year. The Orioles have him for one more season, 2026, before he hits free agency. You want to get that done because he's not going to pitch better than this next year, but this is still a small sample size. If he goes out there and gives the Orioles 30 starts and pitches around a 3 ERA, he at age 28 is going to command a lot of money next offseason. So even though you might have to overpay a little bit because he's been the best pitcher in baseball for 3 months, you do it now, there's a good chance it could be a cheaper extension than it would be after next year when he hits free agency and everybody else can talk with Trevor Rogers. Then a question from Christian here. What do you think a Dylan Cease contract could look like in terms of the years and the money? He's an interesting case. He's 29 years old. He will turn 30 in December, so he'll be 30 when next year begins. It's kind of been an up and down track where he had that just unbelievable, he had a great year in 2021 with the White Sox. Then he had the unbelievable year in 2022 when he had a 2.2 ERA in 184 innings. Then he was, had some struggles in 23. He bounced back in 24. Then this year he's had a 4.81 ERA, which would be the largest of his career since his rookie season, but also the FIP is much lower. And he's still been durable, right? Last 5 seasons, 32 starts, 33 starts, 33 starts, and 28 starts this year just because the season's not over and he's still been out there. That's durability you pay for, but again, a guy is durable until he is not. I think Cease could be getting the Max Fried style deal where it's, you're looking at 7-ish years, pushing $200 million. I think that's the top level of what Cease could get. I also think he's a guy who could be willing to take one of these crazy, 3-year, $150 million deals and then hit free agency again at age 32 and try to cash in one more time. He's probably the hardest guy to figure out because the ERA has fluctuated so much. There's been walk issues, but he's also been super durable. There's not really many other pitchers who kind of fit the mold of what Dylan Cease has done in his career. Doesn't mean I wouldn't see or wouldn't like to see the Orioles go after him. And then this question from Walter. Walter, I'm going to leave you hanging right here. What do you think of the deadline moves now that we're a month removed? Got an episode coming up next month. After the season is going to be one of my first off-season episodes, kind of recapping the deadline moves, how all the guys they traded away did, and then how all the guys the Orioles got or were doing in the minor league system. Got a whole episode on that one, Walter. So just have to wait a little bit, but I do thank you for your questions today. That'll do it for today's live mailbag episode. Thank you so much for joining us live here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel if you did. And that'll do it for this week on the pod as well. It is Orioles and Dodgers this weekend at Oriole Park. The Dodgers come in. Orioles just helped out the Dodgers a whole lot by sweeping the Padres. LA now has a 2.5 game lead over San Diego, although the Dodgers lost a series to the Pirates this week. So anything could happen. Friday night, 7:05 is Tyler Glasnow versus Dean Kramer. Saturday, 7:05 is the Cal Ripken 30th anniversary of 21-31. That's Yoshinobu Yamamoto against Trevor Rogers. That is going to be a fun night at the ballpark. I will be at a comedy show in DC that night, but if you're at the ballpark, enjoy. And then 1:35 on Sunday, a couple of veterans out there. Tomoyuki Sugano against Clayton Kershaw to finish off the series against the 78-61 defending World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. Then I will be back on Monday, recapping everything you need to know from those 3 games between the O's and the defending champs. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.